Good afternoon, Saitlanders. How are you? We trust that you're enjoying a nice long weekend. 2 public holidays, making it for many people who are able to take the Friday off a 5-day public holiday. I'm preparing to go to Johannesburg to do some very important work with members of the Afdeling Buitelands, Saitlanders Afdeling Buitelands team. And I'm going to leave in a few minutes, so this is going to be a brief video. CBDCs. I didn't know this. And about 2 weeks ago, I think it was Pierrot Leroux sent me a video about this, or it was on his group. And I watched it and I was slightly skeptical. I mean, how could it be possible that this is all going on and nobody has reported it? Did you know that Nigeria has been implementing CBDCs for a year? Just give me a second. I had a little computer breakdown, and this is the 3rd time that I am recording this video. It's just occurred to me that I lost that page. Here we go. I'm going to tell you what the Nigerian government central bank, the Central Bank of Nigeria, says. Now, you must excuse the English. Okay. Not just another CBDC, with an exclamation mark. With 81 countries and more on the race to develop, own their central bank digital currencies, let it be very clear that we are not just another CBDC. We are a people-oriented digital currency leveraging technology to connect individuals and businesses for easy trading and financial inclusion. We push the boundaries, bridge the gaps, and tell actual humane stories. We are the foremost audience-centric digital currency brandishing a face. Okay, so the currency of Nigeria is the naira. It's worth about 4 South African cents, so 1 rand would buy you 25 naira. Nigeria is a country of about 130 million people. Different people quote different figures. I've been to Nigeria 23, 24 times. I haven't been for a few years, but I know the place well enough to say to you that I believe that the correct figure is about 130 million people. I think I'm entitled to an opinion as long as there's no definitive answer, you know. And the economy of Nigeria is somewhat bigger than South Africa's, not by very much, but it is bigger. It's not a very advanced economy. I can tell you that in 2006, it was during the World Cup in Germany, FIFA World Cup. I spent about 6 weeks in Nigeria, and there were times when I had very little work to do. So I went around a lot, and I already knew this. It was already a very well understood thing. But I had more time than ever on that occasion, not working intensively 12, 14, 16 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week, with lots of time on my hand. I was reminded as I looked for interesting places of how Nigeria simply didn't have a shopping center. Nothing like you would think of a shopping center. And then the Palms was opened by some South Africans. Well, presumably the developer was Nigerian. But the anchor tenants, and I think very much the forces behind it, were Game, ShopRite or Checkers, and Ster-Kinekor, and 1 or 2 other South African brands. The economy is largely informal, but fact remains that it's a big economy. So about a year ago, they introduced this e-naira, the e-version of the naira. And another thing that I should mention to you is I believe, I could be mistaken, 2008, I was there again, and the guy I was with was responsible for the payments. There were 2 of us. So we were dependent upon whatever his money was. In other words, it was his team team's baby to cover the costs of me being there. Also a South African guy. And I can't remember what happened, but he was unhappy about using his credit card or using his debit card. I don't remember. And he wanted to withdraw money. I tell you, we searched for 2 whole days to find one ATM in Lagos. And eventually the ATM that we found was supposedly the only ATM in Nigeria, and it wasn't in a central location, as you might have expected. That was about 2008-ish, if I remember correctly. So my point is that in many ways it's undeveloped and backward. In many, many, many ways. A year ago, they introduced this CBDC, and the adoption rate was very low. Nobody wanted to know anything about it. And by September of last year, roughly 7 months ago, they'd made practically no progress with their CBDC. And then, all of a sudden, the central bank began to withdraw banknotes. And how they did that was, when banknotes were returned to the central bank, once they'd gone through the system, and they were ancient, and normal banks, tried to trade them in at the central bank for fresh notes. The central bank wouldn't give the banks fresh notes. They gave them CBDC credit instead, which led to the banks finding all sorts of ways to compel people to adopt the CBDC. I beg your pardon. With the result that in the intervening 7 months, the adoption of the CBDC has trebled. Now, it comes off a very low base. So that trebling is not as significant as you might have thought. Perhaps it went from 2% to 6%. For instance, I don't know. And the number of banknotes in circulation has dropped by something like a third. It's very big thing. And this was instructive to me because I've often wondered, when you consider, for instance, let's go back a few years. Do you remember me making a video about how I had read an article that revealed that 32% of Afrikaners, the highest percentage of any ethnic group in the world, refused to take the vaccination that was coming. Now, there was a kind of a degrees of comparison, a scale in this poll. Half trappe van vergelijking. Yes, I'm eager to take the vaccine. I am going to take the vaccine. I haven't made up my mind if I'm going to take the vaccine. I'll make up my mind if I learn more. I'm really unsure. I don't think that I will. I really don't want to. I'll only do so if I lose my job, and so on to the very last category, which was, I will not take the vaccine no matter what happens to me. End of story, finished and klaar. Afrikaners. Our friend Fritz informed me subsequently that in fact another poll revealed, global poll, you can imagine how many of these things they were doing at the time, that in fact the number is 42%. A better poll, a bigger poll, a more accurate poll of people, Afrikaners, who would not take the vaccine. And that was fascinating to me because, as my father says, the Afrikaners are the spine of this country. And my thinking was, how on earth are they going to get the Afrikaners to take this vaccine? I beg your pardon, to adopt the digital currency. It just seemed to me an improbable thing, a difficult thing. How are you going to get some, if I may use the word without being unkind, primitive Zulu guy in the Dugu forest to adopt a digital currency. It seemed to me that that thing was going to be very difficult in South Africa, maybe more difficult in the Congo. You know, in societies that are more primitive, for want of a better word. But here in South Africa, how? And the Afrikaners veral. And Nigeria has proven how they'll do it. They will simply remove currency from circulation and not replace it. Or replace it, in fact, with digital currency. Until we have no choice. Now you might be saying to yourself, I'll take the care, sir, I refuse. How dare you say something like that, Simon? That's okay. I'm just telling you that it's going to be a lot easier said than it will be done to refuse. Saying you'll refuse, you may end up refusing. Living on top of a mountain. Trading goat's meat for a cup of salt, a bag of rice, and some cooking oil once a month. Maybe you'll get it right. But the majority of people will talk a better game than they will actually end up playing on this subject. It's very, very frightening. Anyway, guys, I've got to dash to Johannesburg. I'm going to keep this brief. May God bless and keep you in these very, very difficult times. Thank you.